Hello and welcome to A Cat in the Garden. And today I want to talk to you guys about an unpopular method of growing plants, but it's one that I use for probably about 80% of my collection. And I don't really know why it gets such a bad rap, but in the plant community, especially when I first joined, a lot of people told me that I could never grow plants this way and that they would never thrive. And I'm kind of here to tell you that it's not really the case. So what is that method? That is going to be growing plants in no drainage. And that's what I do. Most of my plants are grown in pots that do not have drainage holes. I do often recycle things like plastic cups, food containers, you name it. I have some things on order for bigger plants, but yeah, I just want to talk about kind of what I do. There is a potting medium that kind of coincides with this no drainage method that I use a lot. This is actually one of my outliers. This is a very chunky mix. There's no soil. It's just orchid bark, charcoal, perlite, fertilizer, some leca. So this can work as well. I don't have as many plants in this method. I think all the ones that I have are Hoyas. I have done a couple in pond, but I'm not the biggest fan of pond. Same with leca. It doesn't really work as well for me, but I just kind of want to show you all that you can grow a few plants in no drainage. So this is one of the methods I use, especially when I'm propagating. Anytime I'm propagating, I put a plant in a cup about this size, or for alocasias, I have a smaller one, but I don't really do alocasias too much anymore. So I propagate. I really like this method because, especially for propagating, I highly recommend it because you can see the roots. So I do like to only use clear containers. If it's a colored clear container, that's fine too. I don't really like the look as much, but you can always get a cache pot to put over it. But I love, 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 love being able to see the roots. So that is one of the best reasons why I do it. And I also want to show you kind of some of the methods I do. So the medium that I think works best for this is a moss-based mix. This one I do have leca at the bottom. Show you, it's a bit of a glare. But this one I have leca at the bottom. I actually recently put it in here and it's already got roots going all the way to the bottom. This was in one of those smaller 5-ounce condiment cups. That's what I use for props, and it outgrew that, so I put it in this taller container. So I like to do a mix of moss, perlite, cocoa chips, leca, kind of adding some chunkier elements to it, and then I like to do a layer of either leca, I'm kind of testing out the leca right now, but leca or perlite at the bottom, just kind of as a little bit of a reservoir, but also the roots can grab onto that. And another advantage is that I don't have roots coming out of the pot, so when it's like root bound, sometimes if I'm using something like terracotta or a plastic pot, the roots will get all stuck and I'll have to rip them or cut them off a lot of the time to get the plant out. This way, they just kind of circle around the bottom and it's very easy to get them out. Now, I know a lot of people complain about having to untangle plants from moss. With this method, I never have to do that because I never take them fully out of moss. I just add more chunky elements, add a little bit more moss as they grow up, and I just don't have to worry about that. I know a lot of people are afraid to use moss as a long-term medium, but I will say, especially for my anthuriums like this one here, I do have the perlite at the bottom. They love it. They absolutely love it. Even some of my alocasias too. I actually have one over here that I recently had to upgrade its pot. This one had crazy roots. You can kind of see some here. They just love it because you're actually providing extra humidity in here for the roots, and I really think it makes them happy. Now, there are some kind of more tedious disadvantages to doing this. Whenever you water in no drainage, you can let it sit for maybe like 5 to 10 minutes, let the moss soak it up or let the roots soak up the water, and then you have to dump out the extra water. If you don't do that, you're going to rot your plants and it's obviously not going to work very well. So that is a little bit of a tedious disadvantage, but I find that using this, I have to water my plants less often. I typically water these guys probably every week and a half to 2 weeks. And so I think it's worth it personally. It might not be to some of you. And I do want to say, if you are going to try using no drainage, don't try it on your whole collection. Try it on a plant or two first. See if it works for you, because I know that's a lot of things people do. It's like, oh, this is a new trendy way to grow your plants. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there are different things that can work for different people. This is just something that works for me and my style. I am super lazy about watering. It's one of my least favorite plant chores. So if I can give my roots extra humidity, I don't have to water them as often, that works best for me. I usually just dump out the water from one plant into another plant and so on, so that I'm not really using as much water anyway. And it seems to really work for me. Like I said, that's just kind of my style. And if you are struggling with something like being able to keep your plants watered, or if you have lower humidity, like I'm in Texas, it's pretty dry here, this is a way for me to add extra humidity. So like I said, I have this one, and this was in a 4-inch plastic container before, and I just upgraded. This one is slightly wider, like I could barely fit the width in, but it did fit, and it's definitely taller, so I do have about this much extra room from where the pot was before, and just a little bit of an upgrade for it. It has already started rooting down here a little bit. Yeah, there's like a little root here, kind of hard to see. And so it seems pretty snug, pretty happy. And that's another thing about houseplants. They don't need so much room to grow. They don't need huge pots like we would for our vegetables. They really like to have a little bit more of a snug situation. They like to be hugged kind of tightly. And it's just, I mean, this alocasia is gorgeous. The few alocasias I've been able to keep alive have been in no drainage. So for me, that's been a really good situation for them, because I love them and they mostly hate me, but this one doesn't. So that has been really fun. And like I mentioned before, I don't really have a lot of high humidity. And so growing anthuriums was a bit of a struggle before. And now that I'm able to do this, I kind of have them in my sealed soccer greenhouse. They've been doing a lot better, and it just works really well for me. One of the advantages too, because I want to show you this one just to kind of show you what I mean, is that you can really easily see when a plant needs a repot. Now, because I have a lot of light where this plant lives in my cabinet, it's definitely got a lot of green kind of algae going on, but you can see that this plant is definitely root bound. I think that is the point in which I would give it a repot. I do have larger pots on the way, so once I get them, I'm gonna repot this one. I really wanna have it climbing up a pole. I want these leaves to get bigger. I have a lot of trailing heartleaf philodendrons, so the Rio, I think, is my favorite. Yeah, it's my favorite. So I wanna have it continuing to get these larger leaves, which it's doing since I gave it fertilizer, and it's kind of like climbing up the side of my Millsbow right now. So this one actually I propagated in this container, and it's lived its whole life in here. So that's a lot of roots. I did that because it was multiple cuttings, so I wanted more space for them all to root together. And that's kind of the nicer thing about no drainage, is you can kind of do that in a way, because I have the extra humidity for props. I have the moss, which I really like using for propagations anyway. So it was just kind of a win-win situation. I was able to monitor the water level closely and just kind of, or the moisture, because I don't really have a reservoir or anything. I know a lot of people will do that, and I think that works pretty well for leca and pond. Not really my thing, but from what I've heard, growing in no drainage like this works really well for leca and pond as well. So if you don't like moss, you can always do that. For a lot of my props, I also just use straight perlite, nothing else. And then once they're ready, I can move them on to a bigger situation. I don't have to get the perlite off. They can stick to it. It's really good for them. So for me, it just works all around in a lot of different ways. And yeah, that's my Rio. So that's kind of my story, my no drainage situation. I do want to say also, I have quite a few plants in terracotta pots also, and clear plastic pots with drainage. I do like to give them kind of a little, what are they called at the bottom? Like almost like a reservoir, but a little thing at the bottom that catches the water. Sometimes I'll leave the water there and the plant will will soak it up if it's a larger plant or a plant that dries out really quickly. But this is by far my favorite method. And like I said, I'm not saying take all of your plants out of chunky mix and put them in no drainage. It doesn't work for every plant. Like I have plenty of plants that are doing just fine, but if you do have issues with humidity, if you don't like watering, maybe try this for a couple plants. If you got a thirsty calathea or something, I definitely recommend it. It works really well for me, and I kind of just want to defeat the stigma about growing plants in a different way. These plants in the wild, some of them, I mean, you've seen it. You've seen plants growing out of cracks in the sidewalk. Some of these plants will grow up trees. They can grow in a lot of different ways, and I think we should celebrate that. So this is just a little bit of a different way of growing your plants. And if you have any questions about it, anything that I missed, you can definitely let me know in the comments. But that's my no drainage. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to give us a thumbs up down below and subscribe so you don't miss anything else from me and Nutmeg. Thanks again, and we'll catch you in the next one.